Talk over drink.
Talks over drinks.
Welcome to the post-election coverage of Talks Over Drinks. As always, my name is Corey Fauconier. My partner in justice, the guy Markel Prines. Markel, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm feeling great, brother. I'm feeling great. I'm smiling. Like we was just talking about. A lot of other people may not be smiling today, but I have no reason to frown. So, we're gonna keep moving forward.
Food for action.
Absolutely. So today's food for action. I did a post the other day. It was a Superman post before the election. And so this food for action goes like this. In order for a superhero to rise, they have to have a villain in order to fight. So it's kind of like that yin and yang. You can't have one without the other. So depending on your perspective of how this election turned out, you might see things differently depending on your viewpoints.
I got you. All right. Well, I appreciate that food for action. I hope the others will too. My brother of another color, Jeff Kleb, Charlottesville. Good evening, sir. How are you?
All right. Hope to be moving into our new house Saturday. We've got some partial furniture. We've got enough to live on. We got our refrigerator, our washer and dryer, and our internet hooked up. So we're getting some furniture delivered tomorrow. So we're gonna have a bed and a chest of drawers. So our furniture doesn't come from Germany until at least next week. It's in the States, but they've just got to get it to us. So it's been busy, but we're doing okay. And I know half the country was mad about the election. The other half was happy. And I'm not like happy. I'm not sad. I sort of feel like a slight sense of relief. Like maybe we're just going to cool the engines a little bit. Maybe we're going to slow the burn, but there's so many problems that I just don't think disappear on election day. And I think we're going to realize that early next year.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair enough. My Libertarian brother from the Shenandoah Valley, Joshua Huffman, how are you this evening, sir?
Oh, doing fine. Every day I'm getting better from my adventures with COVID. So that's good.
Okay.
Yeah. Just, getting ready for my physical in a couple weeks so I can head overseas.
Okay, well that's good. Good to hear that. And welcoming back everyone's favorite Nazarene attorney, Sandy Sanders. Sandy, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing well, thank Jesus.
Hey, amen to that. So yes. I guess we could jump right in, and I'm sure I definitely did not look at the statistics and stuff as I should. The only thing I can say is that I feel like Jeff and Markel, like I'm happy it's over, and I want us to move forward from here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start with Sandy because I know he had a lot to say when I called him the other day. Sandy, what's your reflection of our 2024 election, and what are you hoping to see come out of what the people have spoken for?
Well, I want to start out by saying that I'm the DEI pick for ugliness. We have to keep the diversity quotient for ugliness. And I thank you, Corey, for continuing to be a trailblazer in that area. Not that you're ugly, that I'm ugly. You picked me. But nonetheless, I just want to say, I'm kind of relieved that it's over. I think this is the election your grandchildren are going to ask you about. They're going to come home and they're going to say, I can't believe that Donald Trump actually, and I don't know what the education system is going to be like. I hope it's better than the one we have now. But yeah, I think they're going to come home and say, I just can't believe that there was somebody like Donald Trump that actually was around and he won and he lost and he looked like he was finished and now he's come back and he's won. And I think there's something going on. I think the conservative movement is better for Trump because Trump did something that a lot of Republicans give lip service. And I would love to hear Corey and Markel on this, especially. I think a lot of Republicans did lip service to reaching out to the Black community. but they didn't really do anything about it, or they got so discouraged they gave up. And Trump never gave up. And I think it's now 3 elections later, I think it's starting to pay off. And I think people need to get in there and say, and find out what's going on. And Hispanics voted. I have a theory about Hispanics. I think the Hispanics that are legal immigrants and they voted and they're legally able to vote, I think resented the fact that people jumped the line and that there was all this crowd of people coming in and potentially taking jobs. And I think that helped the situation. And I think if you have somebody that's maybe a little better with women, I think you could have a landslide of Reagan-esque proportions, like 489 electoral votes. I do think the abortion issue is going to hurt Republicans unless they deal with it properly. But my interest was the third parties, and I thought that, I think that third parties really suffered this time because I think everybody kind of had a sense of, if I'm going to vote, I'm going to vote to keep somebody out. If I vote for Trump, it's because I don't want Harris to win. I think that's oversimplification. If I vote for Harris, it's to keep Trump out. And I think that has carried over to down ballot races. I also think that the fellow from South Dakota, Gideon Oates, got 5% in a statewide race, which is good. I have to look and see if that's ballot access. It probably is. I don't think the Libertarians are going to worry too much about ballot access. I do think they made a little bit of a mistake, but they may not have had a choice in it. That mistake being that they ran somebody for Texas Supreme Court against a Republican and a Democrat who were both pretty solid candidates. I thought I was very impressed with both of them as far as their credentials were concerned, and that might not help them get that 5%. But they're probably going to get 5% somewhere. And I think it's 5% in the last 4 races. So, and the man in Arkansas didn't win. The independence people in Puerto Rico didn't win, but they had their best turnout. They had 30%. I think that's going to put statehood to bed for a long time. You can't admit an American state into the Union with a 30% independence movement. It would be insane, not even dealing with the language issue, which is the heart language of most Puerto Ricans appears to be Spanish. That's great. I'm for that. If that's the language you want to use, that's the language you should use. In fact, I think the Romance languages sound better than English, which is a Germanic language. So, but I think that's going to put it to bed for some time to come, because you can't force people to make an irrevocable political decision. So I'm trying to reach out to those independent, to Juan Damar, who ran for governor, and see if we get him on the show and maybe talk about Puerto Rico and its history, and maybe even get 2 or 3 people to come and talk about. I know why people want statehood, because they want something different. But I think what they really should want is to be their own country and make their own decision. But that also requires a degree of political maturity. Some people groups have not acquired yet. So that's my take on it.
So in the beginning, you asked, I guess, me and Markel for our take. I will tell you, I'm a little bit disappointed in a lot of the social media traffic that I've seen, and I tried to ask God to kind of keep me off of social media talking about politics, because a lot of people are so upset. From my personal opinion,
I think you're right about that.
I think that if the Democrats were not going to run Biden, I don't know the legalities of everything, but I think they should have held another primary. And I think they should have communicated to their voter base and asked their voter base what they wanted to do. This last minute bait and switch with Harris, I think that was a bad move. And I think her perspective on abortion, I think that was another bad move. I mean, our family personally, we just had another grandson. I think grandchildren for me have adjusted my view of the world. I think they're the most beautiful things. And if you don't want children, I'm sure that there's a family somewhere that would adopt your child. So
Yeah.
abortion, that's not, I think that's not really an option. Now, if it's rape or incest or a crime or something like that, yeah, maybe I understand. But, I just feel like they just sunk their money into a bag. I don't necessarily agree it was racism. It was a majority of Americans rejected who they selected to represent their party. Markel, you have any thoughts?
Absolutely. So I would say on a few different topics, there's so much to unpack with this. As far as from my perspective, let's start off with the social media aspect. When I woke up yesterday morning and I looked on social media, me and Corey actually spoke about this. We were surprised that it seemed like a lot of people was quiet. A lot of people was quiet. Either they were in a state of disbelief as to what happened, or people just, they couldn't say anything after such a long road of believing that there was no way that Donald Trump could win. I look at it from the perspective of this was an eye opener. It was more than an election about one man. It was an election about an idea. It was an election about something that could have been written in a movie, and they probably will. There has to be a movie written about this because I believe that this was probably will go down as one of the greatest stories, political stories in history, one of the greatest presidential stories in history, for someone to win an election, lose on the second attempt, and then come back on the third with so many things against them. So it became more like a story, a Hollywood story, which is funny because when you look at it politically, they talk about Democrats or liberals being the media source, the movie going people, the people that like to live in fantasy and stuff like that. But the Hollywood story played out for the other side. The Republicans was looking for a hero too. And we have to remember that both sides was looking for somebody that was going to do something different or take us in a position into a direction that either side want us to go in. It's just that the Democrats, it seems as though one of the biggest issues I see, and I think what swayed a lot of people, is that they have an identity issue. And a lot of people get upset at the Republican Party because they look at the Republican Party and they say, okay, decades and decades, white male, white male, white male, 70 plus, a certain age range, is a certain look. The Republicans kept their identity. The Democrats, it's like, who are you? One of the things that I've thought about too, just thinking about the Democrats' last two choices, leaving out Joe Biden, but thinking about Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. The first thought, or one of the first thoughts that come to my mind is, why isn't black good enough? Why isn't black enough? And then they push the narrative. They made it so much about race, whereas just like the Hollywood story, they make it out to be the Republicans that's all about racism. But then once again, I always hear the Democrats speaking about race. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, one's telling a story about another side, but they're living the story in a way. The other is telling a story and they're living their story their way. So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of things in the messaging that could have been better.
Yeah.
Kamala as a person, she may be a good person, but I didn't see a true honest person in her. And of course, if you look at the media, I wouldn't have known where to find an honest story, because if you look from a Democrat standpoint or from Democrat media, she was perfect. If you look from a Republican media standpoint, she was the worst. She was the female version of Barack Obama. And I think to a good extent, the Republicans did a way better job at framing her as this person that she really wasn't, or to make her appear as though she wasn't the person that you or the Democrats was making her out to be. So the identity issue was a big thing. For her, we didn't know who she was, but then another identity issue was this: the way the Democrat Party actually spoke to us. It let me know that they really don't know who we are as a people when it comes to looking at who they selected to speak, to kind of convince us to make a decision to join the Democrat Party. When I look at people like Cardi B, not to say anything's wrong with her, but that's not somebody that I would look to help me make a decision, an important
Absolutely
decision.
not. You're right.
Megan Thee Stallion, that's not somebody I would look at to help me make an important decision. So that right there just said to me, who do you think I am? How do you see me? You see me as a person that this is what I care about. This is what's important to me.
Yes.
And it was just in that they don't know who they are. They didn't know who we were. And they didn't know what the stats and the statistics, which is something that I'm big on. In my industry, we look at numbers, we look at stats, but we also talk to people just to get a real feel as to what's really going on, because there's always something hidden. And no matter what election cycle we've been in, it always turns out the same. The more we tell each other that there's two things that you're not supposed to talk about, which is politics and religion, it's the further away we get from understanding each other as to what our viewpoints really are. So everybody stays hidden up until the last hour, until you really find out how people really think. But it's been like that for every election. So I'm not surprised that the numbers didn't look the way everybody estimated, because everybody had the wrong perception of who they were and who the people were. So now we're in a place where we have what we have. I'm happy about the situation because, like my food for action statement, I think about when I see people going through different challenges, and I wonder to myself, if you're complaining about this day after day after day, what is it going to take for you to change the situation? It's not going to be anybody external that's going to help you change the situation. It's not going to be any magical law, or, for example, in my industry, everybody looks for a magic button to press to make money online. It's never going to be that simple and easy. But what is it going to take for you to actually get up and do something? Some people, they say if you want somebody to come outside the house and you knock on the door, they don't knock on the door. How do you get them to come out? Maybe you have to set a fire on their lawn in order to get them to run out the front door or the back door with some water to try to put it out. And this may be the fire starter that we need to get things going and done right.
All right.
And I'll yield.
Your opinion, Jeff?
Huh?
Your opinion, Jeff? I think we were glitching for a second.
Yeah, we were glitching there for a minute. Well, I kind of feel like I found it kind of funny that you had a lot of Democrats referring to people as being sexist and racist. But then they said, well, why aren't you going to vote for Donald Trump? Because he's a sexist, he's a racist. Well, why are you voting Kamala Harris? Well, because she's a woman and she's black. It's like, what? that's kind of dumb for people to throw accusations like that around. And people say, well, if Kamala had been a white man, she would have won the election. And it's like, well, they threw away a white man in order to run her as the nominee.
Yeah.
They threw away Biden, but I just, it's like where, people say, oh, you would never, you just wouldn't vote for someone because it's a black woman. It's like, or a woman of color or whatever. It's like, no, I think there are a lot of women of color who'd be good president. Tulsi Gabbard is a woman of color. Nikki Haley is a woman of color. Winsome Sears is a woman of color, although she's an immigrant. She can't run for president, but there are plenty of people who fit that qualification. You can't, if you say you just don't like Kamala Harris's policies, well, you just don't like her because she's a woman or she's color. And it's like, no, man, come on. It's 2024. We're above that. I think that it wasn't really her time. I think she was a heavily flawed candidate. And I think that if the Democrats 6 months ago, they were talking about getting rid of her and, replacing her with Gavin Newsom, I thought they were going to do that and, run the Biden Newsom ticket and then get Biden to step down for health reasons. And then Newsom could have pulled a Gerald Ford, but that didn't happen. I think this year people, they wanted something different, and the inflation's hurting everybody. We're on the cusp of World War III. The people, our allies, don't trust us. Our enemies don't fear us. And I think that a lot of, you got the, boys playing girls sports and all this other, it's like a bunch of little stuff that adds up. And a lot of middle American voters, the people in the middle who aren't dedicated to either party, said, well, we need to do something different. And of course, you had Chase Oliver and Cornel West and Jill Stein and that woman, Dela Cruz, and Randall Terry. You had them on the ballot in some states, but most people, 95% of voters don't know anything about the third party people, which is really sad. But people just felt it was a binary choice. And so many people said, well, maybe I'll like Chase Oliver, but I can't let Trump win, so I got to vote for Harris, or I can't let Harris win, so I got to vote for Trump. And that's why Chase didn't show up very well in the percentages. Debate inclusion is something I've always thought that we need to work on. And one other thing I wanted to discuss, and I'm going to let somebody else talk. I'll bring it up later, but I wanted to discuss something about the way we draw legislative districts, but I'm going to bring that up later. That's a different subject.
That's fine. Well, thanks for sharing. Josh, what you think?
Well, I mean, just like most elections, whether Trump or Harris ended up winning, the government won the election. I mean, we're going to have more laws, higher taxes, less freedom. Unfortunately, it's just sort of the way things are. And, of course, when you look at it now, and of course, I had a sort of a list of why it makes sense that either one of them lost, depending on the situation. And, of course, talking about why Harris lost. And I think a big part of it, and other people have touched on this, is, they call themselves the Democratic Party, and yet Harris's run to the nomination had no elements of democracy in it whatsoever. Unfortunately, oftentimes in the two major parties, you've got this mindset where someone should be the nominee because it's their turn. They've been in the party, they've helped the party, and that makes them the right candidate, which of course it doesn't. And when Harris ran for president back in 2020, I mean, she was one of the first candidates out. I mean, she was out before a single primary vote was cast. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, oh, well, she's the sitting vice president. Well, let's give her the nomination because Biden, I mean, yes, Biden should have dropped out considerably earlier, like when they could actually, have a nomination process. And I think that would have turned out far better for the Democratic Party. Then they could have said about Trump, hey, we don't want this old guy in office, but it's sort of hard when they're running an old guy too. And I believe both of them have considerable mental decline. And I thought the election would be closer than it turned out to be, which I assume probably a lot of us did. I mean, that's what the polls seem to indicate. Again, Virginia wasn't in play. I didn't expect it to be in play. And, for people who are mad, because it seems like I always get somebody mad at me after a presidential election. Of course, I voted for Chase Oliver, and, I don't regret that. But, even if I voted for Trump or Harris, I mean, it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election in the slightest. And it's frustrating to me that people don't realize in a presidential election, your one vote is not going to change the outcome of the election. It's probably not going to change the outcome of your state. So, I mean, almost certainly it won't. So, you shouldn't feel compelled to have to vote for somebody you don't really want just because you don't like somebody. Oh, no. Well, there goes the cat.
That's the cat.
Yeah. Just because you're more afraid of somebody else. I mean, we could sit here and talk about, who was the greater evil, Harris or Trump, and we probably wouldn't all agree on that statement, which is fine. I mean, we have that we had that conversation at our Libertarian gatherings here in Harrisonburg. But fortunately, of course, none of us had to vote for either Harris or Trump. I mean, we could actually say, let's go find someone who has our mindset. And of course, for me, I thought that Chase Oliver was a pretty good candidate. I was disappointed to see that he didn't do as well, but I can understand why, because of course, so much of this election was couched in fear. What are the terrible things going to happen if Harris gets elected? What's the terrible things that are going to happen if Trump gets elected? And people say, well, I don't want those terrible things, so I got to vote for the less terrible things. So yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I didn't actually stay up until, to watch the outcome until it was actually decided in favor of Trump. I mean, things were looking very heavily for Trump when I went to bed. I think, I don't know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, something like that. But those are my initial.
I went right to bed. Mandy woke me up at like 3 a.m. and was like, he won. And I was like, I knew he was going to win, I believe, but I didn't think it was going to be a landslide like it was.
Yes.
And he did a job in flipping districts, Miami-Dade County in Florida, he flipped that. A lot of Latinos came out in support of President-elect Trump. And like you said, Josh, I feel like as I was looking at some of the Libertarian results today, I think Oliver, Wes Benedict got like 25 or 28% in his race. I did find out today on Facebook that Steve Porter was running for town council in Herndon. Yes. And there's a recount on the table at this time, and they're trying to raise money for the recount. And I have to text him back. I think he said they need $2,000 and they got $600 of the $2,000. So I guess as we try to move forward and help people with liberty issues, maybe we need to have a fund in case there is a recount, so the Libertarian can have the funds necessary to command that recount. I'm going to definitely call them tomorrow and see, if I can help them out a little bit. I had no idea that Steve was running, because if I had known he was running, I probably would have sent him some money. So I guess that's my next question is, how does the Libertarian Party make some improvements? Because I know we're kind of divided, with the classical liberal party. I know people are upset about the so-called Mises takeover. So I'm sitting back and I'm contemplating what we can do to make that situation better. Jeff, Josh, either you have an opinion on that?
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay. Well, the first thing is, and of course we talked on the phone while I was the other day while I was waiting for my order at Taco Bell. But I think the most important thing is we've got to get Angela McArdle out as national chair of the Libertarian Party. I knew she was bad before this election, but my goodness, I mean, first she was getting the Libertarian Party to support RFK Jr., which of course is fine when he's actually running for the nomination of the party. That's, but after he didn't get it, that's a different question. And then of course, the Mises Caucus and the chair, going openly supporting Donald Trump over the Libertarian candidate. Now, maybe they thought that person was better. I don't see how from a Libertarian perspective. I mean, they say, oh, well, Ron Paul might get a position. He's not going to get a position in the Trump cabinet. And of course, he made that thing that he'd free Ross on day one. Will he do so? I don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that's the big thing. If you don't have the top of the party actually supporting the party's candidates, you're going to have a problem. Because, of course, we do get very limited press coverage as libertarians. And then, when we're out there saying, oh, Trump's a libertarian or something nonsensical like that, it doesn't help because, I mean, at that point, what's the point of having a libertarian party if we're just going to say, whoever the Republicans are running or vice versa, if whoever the Democrats are running are good enough for us. So, and fortunately, we don't have that situation. There are some people in the state Libertarian Party like that, but in general, I was relatively satisfied that the state party was pretty good on that.
Jeff, your thoughts?
I agree with something Josh said earlier about I'm drawing a blank now, but he was talking about the people deciding, oh, okay, well, I'm going to vote for this person because they're the lesser evil, and this person because they're against this person because they're the greater evil. I think that's a tough nut to crack. It really is. And you'll have people who in the Libertarian Party who they have like a purity test. Like if you're not 100% pure libertarian, then, well, you should just go be a Republican or you should just go be a Democrat. And, it's hard to find anybody who's going to be 100% libertarian. I'm sometimes a 70% libertarian. I'm sometimes a 90% libertarian. It just depends on where, what the particular issue is and what the particular time is. A big problem that libertarian candidates have, and I noticed this with Chase Oliver, is he's got a lot of energy. He is very intelligent. He's articulate. He's very good at telling you where he believes that we need to be, but he can't really articulate the proper way to get there. Like when he was talking about, I'm going to close down all the bases and bring all of our troops home. Well, the president can't really do that. Also, we have treaty obligations with other countries that can only be removed by advice and consent of the Senate. We have contractual obligations with foreign governments, American businesses, and foreign businesses as well. And I appreciate the sentiment, but you can't do that. You kind of create a vacuum. But he's very good at saying where he thinks he believes we should be. Same thing with like balancing the budget. He says, well, I would just keep vetoing it until they give me a balanced budget. As much as I admire that, in the real world, you're going to run into a problem where he would end up being impeached. They would find some reason, some excuse to impeach him. And, impeaching anybody nowadays is like indicting a ham sandwich. It's pretty easy. And they even impeach somebody who was already out of office, which is totally unconstitutional. But I think it would be nice to have a libertarian president sometime in my lifetime. I don't see it happening, but I always wondered, why doesn't the Libertarian Party work harder to get a governor or a member of Congress or some people in a state legislature? Because we know there's libertarian sheriffs, there's libertarian judges. You might have a libertarian mayor somewhere. If they could just get some people in office and show, prove they can be, they can be all about personal freedom and economic liberty, both, and show people there's a new way of getting things done.
Yeah, that's what Markel says. Now, I remember Sandy had written a piece. Sure. Yep. Sandy had written a piece for Virginia Wright that talked about how the Libertarian Party would be able to raise a substantial amount of money. Sandy, you want to share a little bit about that article that you wrote for Virginia, right?
Yeah. Yes. I did. By the way, I looked at the Herndon. It looks like Stephen Porter's on the outside looking in. He's got about 100 votes to make up to get the 6th. So he's not very likely to get it, but he's made a good showing. I mean, he didn't do terrible. Sometimes you get these situations where the Libertarian gets like 500 and everybody else gets like 2,000. It kind of looks embarrassing. But my theory is, and it's your theory, Corey, is I think you have to, my piece, your theory was run local people and get local people elected and then you advance them up. My theory was, and I agree with that, my theory is Virginia and New Jersey are key. And I think Kentucky also does stuff like this too. In the off-year elections, if the Libertarians would find the best candidates possible to run for the various statewide offices, with their best candidate being the lieutenant governor, not governor and not attorney general, because less money is spent on lieutenant governor. And then what you do is you go around to all the states that don't have major elections and you say, give us a little extra money here in Virginia for these candidates to get some real attention. And I think you can. You know, the guy in South Carolina who ran against Lindsey Graham raised $100 million because he went around. It wasn't that he was a particularly compelling candidate, but he raised $100 million all around the country with these little donations, like $33 each. And I think the Libertarians could do that. And I think you would get better. I think you would get better results. And then you build on that. People can see the power of money. You can see the power of money. I called it a libertarian tithe, I think. Corey, I think you remember me talking about tithing, that not necessarily literally saying 10%, but that you would give up, that you would be sacrificial in your giving for the Libertarian candidates. Because if you're going to be a member of the party, you ought to be sacrificial in giving the money to the party. So that's, yeah, that's my take on it. And I think Stephen Porter's done the right thing running for town council. And you see, the next time, if he stays involved, they'll run town council again, probably in 2 years. And if he stays involved and maybe gets involved in a committee or something, then he might win the next time. It doesn't look like he's going to win this time, but he did well. He did much better, I think, than he did the time before. So I think that's right. And so I still think that that's the way. And the Greens can do the same thing. You have to have a message, and you have to have a local message. Save money, save the taxpayer money. You have to have that local message that attracts people to your campaign.
Wow. Well, Jeff, you wanna share what you were saying about the?
Yeah. Well, first, I wanted to say something back to Sandy. Ask him a question. I know in Virginia, for the people who might be outside the Commonwealth, we are an oddball state along with New Jersey, and we elect our governor in the odd year following a presidential election. So Virginia will nominate a governor, elect a governor in 2025. And in Virginia, you can only be governor one time. You can't succeed yourself. You have to serve a term and then sit out a term and then run again. But the lieutenant governor doesn't have that same restriction. I think Bill Bowling was lieutenant governor like 3 times or something. But I wanted to ask Sandy, the lieutenant governor and governor run in separate races along with the attorney general. So you could have different parties of each. But in New Jersey, does the lieutenant governor run in a separate election from the governor, or do they run as a ticket like they do in many other places?
I'll look that up, but let me answer the first part of Jeff's question, and that is, with the reason. All of the governor and the lieutenant governor do run separate races. And the thing that makes a lieutenant governor, to me, more attractive to third parties is two things. One, they don't spend as much money. So if a libertarian could somehow, let's say, raise $1 million, and you have a particularly attractive, there's a lady named Carla Howell who lives, I think, in Northern Virginia. It might even be Herndon. She ran in Massachusetts 2 or 3 times for various offices, and she did very well. In fact, she was instrumental in them getting ballot access. She's a very savvy woman. She would make a great candidate for lieutenant governor because of her prior. The media would have to take her seriously because she ran before in another state. And what happens is that suppose Carla Howell got $1 million and she got her liberty message on the air, and say the Democrat raised 10 million and the Republican raised 5. That $1 million still has some real clout, even though it's smaller, because when McAuliffe and them ran, it was 63, and Sarvis ran for governor, it was $63 million. The D and the R's did $63 million between them. Sarvis only had 330,000 or something. So he got swamped. And that's why I think the lieutenant governor is more important. But I am going to look up New Jersey. I don't think they run as a running mate. I don't think they run. I don't think they have a running mate, but they might have. They might have.
I just didn't know if they ran as a ticket like the president does.
Yeah. If they do, I didn't hear too much about.
In some places, appoint the attorney general.
No, they do run together as a ticket because the lieutenant governor this time, Murphy's running mate can now run for governor. And that's what they're going to do. You can only run twice. There's term limit in New Jersey. So the lieutenant governor can now run for governor. And the guy that ran for governor before that came within 1% of winning, he's going to run again. He was a state senator that no one had ever heard of. And he came within 1% of winning. So he's at least got the most. I don't know if the party's going to get behind him or not. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity to get people elected. And I think we also ought to identify, because the delegates are also up for election, who's the most vulnerable delegates. Now, there's a number of seats in Northern Virginia where there's only going to be one candidate.
And that's, I think, to me, and between the 5 of us here, there needs to be a Libertarian, Green, a Constitution Party candidate. And I think Sandy's right. We need to figure out a way to get people to help raise money in that off year, because that's a year that everybody else, there's nothing else going on in the other states in the union. So I think we should use that as kind of a vehicle to kind of push Virginia and New Jersey forward, and see if we could get people from the other jurisdictions to send money, and for us to try to mount the best candidate. I think the other problem is what Josh said, the media. I came in and helped on the tail end of Josh's campaign for state senate last cycle. I reached out to media that I knew, and he was able to he's the first candidate I've worked with that had news coverage on the evening news. And, he was interviewed and had a blurb along with the other candidates. I think that's the problem. The media doesn't pick up on things, and that's hurtful. And maybe, like, if we had some more money, you could take our ads in newspapers, or you could, speak with the local news on a regular basis to keep that liberty message being broadcast. Because I think that's why there's a lot of podcasters out here now, because we feel like we have to tell our story, because nobody else in the mainstream is giving the independent any type of push or support. So,
and I would like to just add to it, just to kind of tie everything together as far as what they can do. It goes back to what I was saying about identity. They need to study this election, of course, previous elections. I think things should start with the marketing team to analyze and really understand what is really going on in the country as a whole. First, determine your identity. Like I said before, Democrats' problem was their identity was all over the place. We didn't know who they were. So the Libertarian Party, for example, we definitely need to, or they need to establish who they are, what are the core beliefs, core foundational beliefs, and then they need to implement some things like the Republicans, or I should say Trump, have a candidate that's strong enough to stand on that political hill and willing to, just be open and transparent. I don't want to say honest. Who knows who's going to be honest, but be transparent enough to stand on the principles and the values that the party is standing on. And if they do start in lieutenant governor type of status, let's say they have a Trump-like candidate or someone that right in the middle. I think possibly having someone that goes right in the middle of Democrat, Republican, that might be their sweet spot. Someone who's not too strict on what Democrats like. Yeah, they're okay with certain things, and then they're not too strict on what the Republicans like. So maybe they need to be the party of the center and establish an identity where people can see them or get an opinion of them as being, hey, they're willing to listen to my concerns. They're willing to include me. They have Black people. They have white people. They have gay people, straight people. They have a diversity within them. They're a welcoming party. This is separate. This is completely different from a Democrat party or a Republican party. Those two parties have their identity. Their identities have been established now. After this election, we kind of, looking at social media, it's kind of like people are really identifying people by their political party. So now I would say it would be the best time for them to establish their identity as a party of welcoming Americans that respect, of course, the Constitution, respects your freedom of choice, and believes in the economy, growing, business, have a business mindsets, a wealth mentality. I think that's also another thing that happened here in this election. It was a choice or a decision between, if I think about it, just lack of better words, but it was a choice between a welfare state and a success business-like state. That was the opinion of a lot of people that I spoke to about what these two candidates represent. So if they can establish a identity as we have a candidate who's business-minded, they believe in God, they're religious, they believe in family structure, but they also believe in people coming together, building, working hard, blue collar, white collar workers, but also grinding, working together to build something to raise the whole community and presenting that on a big stage. I think that would be the start of a great party. And then the media, just by default, might just say, man, they're really doing something different. Because I find that, and I take it back to my industry, when my job is to post on social media and to get attention. But as a marketer, you never know what's going to get attention. It's kind of random. You might see somebody like I posted before. I've been on TikTok and I've scrolled and seen people live on their TikTok with thousands of viewers doing the craziest things. I saw a woman, she was fully clothed. She was in the bathtub showing people how to wash. So she had the scrub brush, she had bubbles in the tub, but she wasn't an attractive woman, so to speak, but she had thousands of viewers. And I'm wondering to myself, why is that? Then I seen another video of a woman, she was at work, but she was asleep. She would answer the phone, put it down, and then take a nap. And then you would hear her snoring. But people sat there and watched. And I watched too, for the purposes of seeing what is this? A lot of people try hard to get things accomplished and never get things accomplished with all the efforts that they put forth. And then there's other people that things just happen naturally for. So that's kind of the gap of where marketing kind of fits in there. You never really know what's going to hit, but once when you see what hits, you work with it. You repeat the process. You recreate that same situation. You do it over and over and over. And that's something that I would say that Donald Trump did very well. If you thought he was a racist, well, he never changed. You always thought he was racist. he consistently gave you that outlook. If you thought that he was all about America, he consistently gave you that outlook. It was no part of Donald Trump that you would say he was this person today, but then tomorrow he was somebody completely different.
I think what you just described about talking about the parties, I think you described a lot of what the Libertarian Party is. That's what I think. I think what makes the four of you gentlemen great is that Jeff has a perspective about the Constitution that makes him powerful. Sandy has an understanding of the law and what legally can be done within the confines of the law to help catapult liberty forward. Markel, you have a perspective of social media, advertising, and marketing, which I still don't think the Libertarian Party has tapped in enough to. And Josh has a very good command of policy. And I think that a lot of things like Jeff was saying, Chase Oliver said he wanted to do something, but he didn't understand the policy enough to get that jump started and get that done. So I kind of feel like we have something that
can Michael Termott run for statewide office?
So I spoke with Mike Termott via email this morning. I sent the campaign.
I don't think he's lived here for a year, because I think that's what Jennifer told me.
But something's going to happen because Mike, I sent the email. I was like, good run. It was good to meet you. You all always have a voice with us. He responded. He said, Corey, thank you. We appreciated you guys having us. He said there's going to be some news coming out of Virginia shortly. And he told me he was going to keep me posted. So I don't know if he's running for something else, if maybe he's running for governor. I don't know what's going on. But as soon as they let me know what's going on, I'll definitely pass it on to you for. I thought he was a great candidate. I thought he was going to be the pick. And like I told both him, Chase, and their team, I'm like, don't do what everybody else does and disappear on us. I've tried to keep in touch with Larry Sharp. I haven't spoken with him in a couple months. I did speak with Bill Redpath 2 or 3 days ago. I sent a message to Dr. Lark. I'm playing with him. So I definitely would like to, keep in touch with these people because like Josh said, they're the spark to kind of get everybody riled up and rallied together. And I just think that unfortunately is our downfall as a party. We lose focus of the leaders that kind of keep us together. And I want to see all of those people remain together because it may not be Chase Oliver or Mike Termott. It might be the next person that they attract into the party. But I think that all the campaigns need people like are in this show to bring their superpowers, so to speak, to the table to help, because you can't. It's what I've learned from Markel and Sandy and that Jeff and Josh too. You got to have a team of people, and I might not be good at something, but you guys may be better, and you guys feed me the information, and then I just take it and package it and give it to the media, and maybe that's going to be the spark that help to get somebody on TV, to get the liberty message broadcast to those people that Jeff always talks about that never hear about us because we're not on the news.
That's right.
So,
That's right. That's right.
I wanted to
That's
touch on
right.
something.
That's
before we
right.
Parted ways tonight.
Go ahead, Jeff.
This is going to be kind of Richmond centric. So some of those people who might be listening or watching this live outside of the area. It's going to, I don't mean to bore you to death, but in the Richmond area, the biggest suburban county is probably Chesterfield. It's 448 square miles, population probably about 400,000, give or take. And it's mostly southwest of Richmond. And some of it kind of goes southeast once you get down out of the city a little bit. But nevertheless, when they did the gerrymandering, the redrawing of our congressional districts, my son lives in Chesterfield County. He is in the 7th district. My friend Daryl lives in Chesterfield County, is represented by the 1st district. Okay. Corey lives in Chesterfield County, a little bit to the south. He's represented in the 4th district, and I'm talking about the U.S. congressional districts. Now, that is very stupid because, you have three different Congress people. You have the 4th district represented by Jennifer McClellan. Her district goes kind of like southeast part of Henrico and all the way down to the North Carolina line. Rob Whitman's 1st district goes all the way from the Potomac River and all up through the northern neck along the Rappahannock and then down into Hanover County and maybe part of New Kent. And then the 7th district goes from like Culpeper down like sort of around Fredericksburg and down into Chesterfield County. So you have a congressman who most of his people are in Culpeper, and that's going to be Vindman. I believe his name is Edward Vindman. He just won. But then you have Rob Whitman's district. Most of his people are up in the northern neck, up along the Rappahannock. And then you've got Jennifer McClellan, and most of her people are like Petersburg, Colonial Heights, on down that way. So the people in Chesterfield essentially lose power because they're divided among 3 different Congress people who don't share any of their interests. And I've always thought you could get 5 college sophomores majoring in political science, and you could get a computer program, and you could make your districts as compact and contiguous as possible. Because Corey, if Corey is my neighbor, a black man who's my neighbor has a lot more in common with me than a white guy who might live in Newport News. So why are we making these districts so strung out like that? We should worry about population, not ethnicity or whatever. As Corey told me yesterday, there are several districts that are represented by black Republicans, and they're majority white districts. I think of Byron Donalds in Florida. And you probably have some white districts represented by black people. You got black districts represented by white people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like you have to keep things compact and contiguous because it works. A representative government works best that way. I'm having trouble articulating exactly what I mean. I think you guys get the drift. I'll let Corey jump in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like I said, the last time that they drew those lines, it was some political science professor, I believe at UCLA, that drew those lines, and they're not contiguous at all. And I think Jeff is right. That's detrimental to the county of Chesterfield, and that's something that I don't think should have been done. Do we have closing thoughts
Can I
this
speak
evening,
to the
gentlemen?
lines before we go?
Sure.
Well, they passed this amendment that I voted for that said, we're going to have a redistricting commission, and it's going to be nonpartisan. And they had 5 Republicans, Democrats, and 5 independents. Happened. I mean, I voted for it because I figured the Republicans are going to get screwed otherwise. And the redistricting commission couldn't decide because they just couldn't. They deadlocked. I don't know how 15 people can deadlock, but they did. The Republican plan got rejected, the Democrat plan. And so it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, according to the rule, then hired the guy from UCLA to do it. And that's how you got the districts you do. And let me also say that I agree with Jeff that Chesterfield got their vote diluted.
Yep.
I also agree that race should play no role. The only reason that race ever played a role was because the Voting Rights Act required, or was interpreted to require, majority minority districts to ensure that minority people got elected. And what happened is that those districts ended up electing very radical people who were not in the mainstream of their party, like Delegate, like Representative Clyburn from South Carolina, for example. And so it did. And I think Jeff is right. Now, I don't know if there's a better way to do it. They were really bad. They're at least a little bit better, but they could sure be a lot better. I think the gerrymandering is always wrong, but I don't know how anybody's going to stop it unless the courts intervene in it.
What does it? You recall the name of the case, Sandy? After the Republicans and the Democrats were deadlocked, that took it to the state Supreme Court and then brought the political.
It wasn't a case; it was the procedure. If they didn't decide by a certain time, because you got to have your lines in place for an election. So if they didn't decide by a certain time, see, this is why Paul Goldman, long time Democrat activist, about 85 years old, a really brilliant fella, but he's weird too, if you'll forgive me for saying.
I remember him.
But like many brilliant people, we're kind of weird sometimes. But he said, I'm voting against the redistricting because what's going to happen is the Supreme Court's going to end up deciding every time. And I think Goldman's probably right.
Right.
I think it was a good idea, but it's never going to work in the present because the insiders kept the power. And that's why you have what you have in that situation.
Wow.
I don't know how much more time we have on our podcast, Corey.
No, well,
are we doing an hour and a half?
We're good. Josh, do you have any closing thoughts or remarks?
Well, number one, actually, I was actually rather involved in the redistricting commission. I was actually encouraging people to vote against it. The reason is because, number one, they had this commission, of course, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, but everybody had to be, in order to be part of that commission, you had to be chosen by the leaders of the Republican or Democratic parties. So in actuality, there were no independents. If you weren't a Republican or Democrat, you couldn't participate. And number two, each party, the Republicans and Democrats, were both given a veto over the process. So, they didn't really have any incentive to work together. So I knew the commission would fail, and unfortunately it did. I hope we can come up with something better. But yeah, will you be on the commission again? I was on the commission. I was never on the commission because I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I actually did apply to the commission, but they didn't accept me because the person in my area that would make that decision was then Speaker of the House of Delegates, Todd Gilbert, who about the same time I applied to the commission, defriended me on Facebook, and I thought, well, this isn't going to go so well. But nevertheless, getting back to the Libertarian Party, I really hope we can have a statewide candidate next year. Now, is it governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general? it doesn't really matter, and I can see arguments for any of them. But we haven't had a statewide candidate in what, like 6 years, I think? 5, 6 years, something like that?
2017.
Okay, so quite a while. And yeah, we
I
need,
think it was 2017.
I would really like to see one. So I'm hopeful that that will happen. I don't know who's in the works to make that happen, but yeah. But that's all I need to say this evening. Thanks.
All right, that's fine. Markel, closing thoughts?
Closing thought is this. I'm looking forward to all of the people that we've gotten to interview. I'm looking forward to speaking with a lot more people. We're on the same similar journey as some of the politicians, as a growing show, something that we want to expose because we have information that we believe is helpful to the masses. So we're on a mission to expand and grow and help the community of the United States as a whole, when we say community, or when I say community. So I want to also just invite people to comment on the video, like, share this podcast, contact us, leave messages if you're interested in learning more about politics, hearing certain topics that we talk about. If you're interested in learning more about how to start your own home-based businesses, I think now is the time for everyone to step their game up, whether you're happy about the decision of the way the election went or you're not. I think this is a time where economic development and growth and moving to the next level is going to be very important. So we have all the technology, the AI and things like that. One of the other things that I think really helped in this election is that on the Republican side with Donald Trump, he enlisted a lot of key people to help push him over the hurdle. So like I mentioned about how the Democrats, they went and got people like Cardi B and people like that. Well, Trump, he's talking to people like Elon Musk. He's talking to Joe Rogan, people that have large platforms, that have large influence and things like that. So with the way I see the connections that he's looking to build, I see the next 4 years being more of a additional experiment. We're going into a new age, like I said, with technology. If we're going to have a President Trump and a Elon Musk type of environment, because I don't want to leave him out of there, even though he's not a politician, but for Trump to kind of lock arms with him in this way, I don't know, it makes me think about what's the superhero? That not Mega Man, but what is it? Tony Stark.
Is it Iron Man?
Yeah, Iron Man.
Yeah. Iron Man has popped up in my head over the last couple of days, just thinking about that. Like, man, Elon Musk and Donald Trump combination, it just makes me think of Iron Man, the movie, and how if we're moving into this age where things are just going to start happening at lightning speed, and we just all need to be prepared and willing to take part in this new experiment that's going to be happening.
Yes.
Well, like I said, man, I appreciate you gentlemen for your time. We're going to continue to try to bring you guys content on a weekly basis going forward. Regardless of how you feel about the election, you got to move forward. As always, my name is Corey Fauconier, my partner in Justice God, Markel Prines, my brother of another color, Jeff Kleb, Charlottesville, my Libertarian brother, Josh Huffman in the Shenandoah Valley, and everyone's favorite Nazarene attorney, Sandy Sanders from Hanover. We are Talks Over Drinks. I'm somewhere in Tennessee riding along, and we definitely encourage you guys to be part of the show. Like, subscribe, share us, and remember, it's never too early or too late. Talks Over Drinks. Cheers, everybody.
All right, let's talk over drinks.
Talks over drinks.